Hello, my name is Keion. I'm 39 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right,
Yeah.
Keion. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Well, let's see. I was born in Northwest Indiana, the Hammond, East Chicago, Gary area. I stayed there till I was about six and a half. So I'm guessing around that time, or it might have been a little bit after my mother decided to move to Mississippi, back to Mississippi, because that's where she's originally from. Um, Somewhere around 89, 90 is when my uncle introduced it to her, because he lived in Mississippi, and apparently they were talking about it. I didn't catch wind of it until probably a year after that. So around the second grade, which was around 91, is when things started to become more Jehovah Witnessy around the house.
Okay, so it sounds like you were about 8, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I was right around 8. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same age I was. So I understand that. So so you were about 8 when you started hearing about this in Mississippi. Did that change your life a lot? I mean, I don't know what your life was like you kind of got a little bit of a pre-JW life, and then it starts to change.
Well, slowly but surely, because of course there's not much you can do between birth and 8. So when up there, only thing I remember with the Indiana years is just me. I'm an only child. Well, by my mother, I'm an only child. So it was just me and her. If my aunts, my cousins, the ones that were around my age group, all females, maybe one guy. But I had a couple of older cousins who were guys, and we were just all just a big clan, because we all stayed not too far away from each other up there in Indiana. So when we came to Mississippi, I had to get used to that, because of course, I have a whole lot of family in Mississippi, because that's where my mother originated from, but I had to get to know them all. So when my uncle, let me back up. We moved in with my older aunt, my great aunt. So it was me, my mom, and my great aunt in that house. And my uncle stayed around about 40 minutes away. So every weekend we would actually go up and spend the weekend at his house, and then that's where I met. He has 3 daughters. So one is a year older than younger than me. One's like 2 years older, and then the other one's about 3 years younger than me. So we all became a new little cousin clique there, and they're all girls. So, but every weekend we would be studying the Watchtower or whatever, and that Sunday morning we would go to the Kingdom Hall up there at his congregation, which was another 20, 30 minutes from where he lived. So so that was a lot of driving, but I guess my mom didn't know that there was a local Kingdom Hall where we were at, not even 5 minutes away. So, but he, as we kept going to that hall up there in the town, it's called Prentice. In that hall, I guess the brothers or whatever, they set her up with a real study at the town I was in, which was Hattiesburg. And that's when she started studying, and she met the sister who was studying with her. And of course, they became best of friends. And she also had 3 children. They were all older than me, though, but they kind of took me in.
Okay, so you kind of, because I was like, well, you left Northwest Indiana, and so you left some of your people behind, but it sounds like you had other people in Mississippi, and now you're being adopted into the congregation a little bit too. So they're putting more people around you. So you, at least I guess you didn't have to, it's not like you just left all of your social circle and then went to nothing. You weren't just isolated. You did still have people around you.
Right. It just they weren't constantly around me like my family was in Indiana, because we could just walk around the neighborhoods up there, except after dark, of course. It's close to Chicago. So, but in Mississippi, of course, there's more country down there. It's not a big city, so it was a culture shock for me. And then everybody, like, as you can tell, I still talk pretty fast, like I'm from up there. But when I got down there, I had to slow it way down just so they can understand what I'm saying. So, but yeah, you had that culture shock, and then it was a little slower life, but I still had fun, me being a kid and carefree. So, as far as regular life, without just not including the religion part, but just regular life, just being a kid, yeah, I walk around the neighborhood. There was kids on my street or around the block, and every now and then we run into each other and play some ball or something like that. So that part was fine.
Nice. So what did change, or what did start to change as your mom, one of the questions I usually ask is, what did the religion mean to you when you were young? And for you, there was a change. It meant a change to some degree. I just don't know what
Mm-hmm.
that was for you specifically. So
Well,
did it mean anything to you, or were you just kind of like, oh, we're just doing this new thing here, but I got friends out of it and that's all cool? Or did you really start taking it seriously?
um, honestly, I don't. In my heart, I never really took it seriously. I would just go. I'm a go with the flow kind of guy. So people would think I was serious. But back then, as a little kid, 8, 9, 10, as I went through grade school, I really started noticing changing in my life around third grade because I still, before everything started setting in, still the Christmas holidays, all that good stuff. And I think my last birthday was in 90, something like that. My last Christmas was actually still in Indiana in 89. So, I mean, 88, whatever it was. So around third grade is when the holiday stuff started setting in, because my mother would be like, well, the famous thing, the kids are doing a birthday party or a Christmas party, whatever. I couldn't eat none of their food, even though it was just regular food you get at the grocery store. I mean, with the exception of the cake, it had a little something on it, but I had to have my own food. So my mom would buy me my own Doritos or donuts or whatever. And I would have to go in the corner of the classroom while everybody else is having fun. I'm just over there, just there. And people would ask me why. And at the time, my only answer was, I don't know. Because I didn't understand the stuff, at the time.
Oh wow. Okay.
The
Yeah, that's got to be hard.
yeah. I just say
To
my
have to
mom
say
told me
I
I
don't
had
know.
to, because she would talk to up until sixth grade, she would actually, before the school year started, talk to the teachers before I was able to say it myself. So I guess she spoke with the teacher at some point, I don't know, in third grade, and it just kind of went from there. So the teacher knew, I didn't, but you know.
Yeah, that's tough, and it shows really kind of what a position you're in sometimes when you're a little JW kid, because uh, your life is and what you do is now at the mercy of your parents and this new thing that they may be involved in this case your mom. And so she's kind of setting it up for you, and you just have to follow along, which is really how it is for kids. But for you, you had a different life up till 8. Again, I know it wasn't a wild authentic life, or
Right.
anything really, because you're an 8-year-old kid. What do you really know about yourself? But then you see the controls start creeping in, because now you can't do the things that other people are doing. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
different. And why? I don't know, right?
That's exactly what it was. I really did not
Confusing.
know. And then, of course, the school I was in, the first through the fourth grade, that school was in pretty much a neighborhood or two over. So you could actually walk to it. Of course, been probably about a 10-minute walk. So a lot of the kids that I formed friendships with stayed right there. But after a while, I couldn't run into them. I couldn't hardly walk too far off of my street or something like that. So stuff started getting more isolated. The only way I would really associate with them would be at school. So that kind of started taking an effect. And then, of course, you got the Kingdom Hall. Luckily, the congregation I was in was full of kids. It was a lot of us. So from different age ranges, from 5, 6 years older than me to 6, 7 years younger than me. And then my age group, it was plenty of us. So I was able to form those bonds.
Okay, so you weren't left in the lurch. Some people
Right.
have to get rid of their friends, and then they're in a congregation where there's nobody their age to hang out with. You at least did have peers, and
Mm-hmm.
other young kids to play with or do whatever. But uh, it is hard when, like you said. So did you notice the change? Like, I get to play with the little worldly kids in the neighborhood, or from school, but now I don't really get to do as much with them.
I noticed it, but I didn't pay too much attention because I had the same amount of friends inside the Kingdom Hall, and we all, like I said, us being different age ranges and whatnot, we were just all kids, and the only difference between me not being born in, as opposed to every single one of them were born in, the only difference was if I would do or say something a little bit out of the rules, like a substitute cuss word saying dang or something like that, they would kind of do little small corrections, or the parents would. I'm like, okay. But but besides that, we all just played around because at the time, the Kingdom Hall was next door to one of the elders' houses. It was a small hall in a small neighborhood. So we could always go over there after on Sunday, and he had a little basketball goal, which is only maybe 6 feet up. But we would go over there, get dirty in our suits and dresses, and play ball, things like that. So that was okay. But of course,
Yeah, that sounds fun. So it sounds like you still had you were still having a good time as far as having somebody to hang out with and everything.
right.
And I gotta ask, so the land that the Kingdom Hall was built on, was it donated by that brother who lived next door?
I don't know, because
Okay.
they were, from what I remember, they were in that hall for a long time. And they, eventually we outgrew it and we had to build one on the highway. But, back in those days, and even way before then, of course, the Kingdom Halls were in a small hall in the group. I mean, in the neighborhood. So I don't know if he owned that land or not. I doubt it, because
Okay.
they ended up, when they sold that land, another brother actually bought it and turned it into a house and a daycare, because his wife had a daycare. Then eventually they moved out. So I think it was just public property. They just sold it. He just happened to be the one to buy it.
Okay. I was just wondering. I've heard of that happening a lot. That's kind of how it was in the Kingdom Hall where I grew up, and so I
Mm-hmm.
just wondered if it was similar. So what was life like? So you're now this little JW Keion, and so what was like at home for you? I think you said you had a single mom.
Mm-hmm. It
So
was
like what was life like at home? What was the temperature of the room? Were you all like deep in it? Was she able to be attentive, or was she running around with like a chicken with her head cut off, trying to keep up everything?
what day of the month it was, all of that.
Okay.
because like she was back in the early 90s. My mother was a teacher, and Mississippi being like number 49 or 50 as far as income goes, I mean, I don't even think she was making 25 a year. So you can't live off that, hardly. So during the day she was a teacher. In the evenings, she got with a sister who had a cleaning business, and that's what witnesses do. So
Of course. Of
so
course.
she would actually clean offices, banks, or city hall or whatever. The one I remember the most was city hall, because she would always take me to it. And so I always would go up there, and I'll see the mayor and the people who make the laws of the city and stuff like that. And they see this little boy come in every twice a week or something like that. So give me candy, Coke, whatever. But that's kind of where I got my work ethic from, because she would work teacher in the day, clean up at night 5 nights a week. And it got to the point a lot of times she would take me if I didn't have anything important going on. So I learned how to work from 8 years old. That's why I'm so tired now. I tell people I've been working for 30 years. And they ask me how old I am, and I tell them, and they don't get it. So, but that was free labor for a long
Yeah. Well,
time.
and then my guess is the work didn't stop there. So you had the secular work, teaching and cleaning, but then also trying to be a mom,
Right.
keep up a house, cook for the kid, whatever, take care of you. And then also, just being one of Jehovah's Witnesses is a tremendous amount of work.
It is. Like, eventually, me being the only child, my brothers were Mario the plumber and Sonic the Hedgehog, guys like that. So I looked at TV a whole lot. I learned. I actually, from what I was told, and actually from what I remember, I kind of taught myself how to read and count and all like that, because I always looked at cartoons, but I was in love with game shows. So Price is Right, Pressure Luck. I was always intrigued by how Peter Tamarkin would calculate the differences to the dollar in his head. Oh, you're such and such short. So I learned how to do that. I just see numbers like, okay, So
Nice.
I was just a little nerdy boy looking at TV. So game shows and cartoons, video games. That was pretty much me if I wasn't hanging around, because eventually the hanging out with the kids in the neighborhood, like I said, that pretty much stopped. Now there was a witness family that stayed on the same street I did, about 5, 6 houses down, but they were older than me. But every now and then they would come by, play games with me, or we would go around the block and play basketball because my mom wouldn't let me go by myself until I was a teenager. So I actually fell in love with basketball, and I say that because something happened with that later. But it was me, my mother. She, workaholic, was kind of forced to be, taking care of me. And then you had my aunt who was elderly. She was right at 69 or 70, something like that when we first moved in. So I think that's why we moved in, because she had that house with just her in it, and it was 3 bedrooms. Plus back then, I think her rent was only $200. So it was pretty easy to keep up the house. Even back then, $200 was not a lot, So
yeah, everybody listening who has to pay rent right now knows that $200 is a pipe dream. There's no way that occurs anymore.
Yeah, my rent now is $1,100. So
yeah, and a lot of times for a 1-bedroom.
That's what I got, a 1-bedroom.
Well, there you go.
But see, I think back then she knew the guy who owned the house, and I think probably market value rent probably should have been double that. But because he knew her and she's been renting since like the 70s or something from him, he just kept it at that. And it was as long as I can remember, as I lived in that house for years, I stayed into it until well after I graduated high school. The rent increased one time to $220.
Oh, wow.
So
greedy landlord.
Yeah, real greedy. Nobody got mad at that increase. But,
that's totally reasonable, obviously.
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's kind of what happened, because from what I was told, she kind of, you got the neighborhood lady. She knew everybody. Everybody knew her. So there would be random people, well, random to me, that would come by the house and say hey to her every few months. Just have a circle of people just bust up over there. And I'm like, who are you? And they would tell me. Well, they really wouldn't tell me because I was just a little boy, but they would just come on in and say hey to her. We called her Mama Lou. Her name was Luella. We called her Mama Lou. But yeah.
Well, there's some what I like is, there's obviously some good times in this. You're still a kid, just trying to have fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you look back at that time of your life, what was it like? So you were in school. You said your friends, I guess now you were just seeing them at school. Did you enjoy school? Was that a respite at all for you as far as, a little bit different life?
It was. Well, you know how witnesses are socially awkward. I got that way. But the friends that I had already made, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, they stuck with me, So even though I got a little weird or whatever, and everybody started growing up, I still always knew them. And, I did make a few new friends throughout the years, but for the most part, it was just kind of awkward, whatever. Didn't know how to keep conversations going, whatever. So I would just be there. But I was the goofy kid, dry joker, so, I was just there, insert a little one-liner or something, just let people know I'm there, but
did you enjoy it at all? Like, you seem like a pretty bright kid picking up things off the game shows and teaching yourself some of these things. Did you enjoy school at all? Did you enjoy learning?
Up to a point. I enjoyed school all the way until the credits and stuff started around high school, because it was easy. The work was real easy for me, to the point to where on certain subjects, they would put me in a corner, but that's because they would give me books of a grade or 2 higher. And then eventually I got into the gifted ed program. So that's how that was. But I didn't like school when around 10, 11, 12th grade, because it was just a chore, because you can combine that with the witness activity, all this quote unquote studying you have to do. But I say around 4th or 5th grade is when it really started setting in, because that's when you got your routine. You got Saturday, get ready for Sunday, Monday, get ready for Tuesday. And then whatever, I was in so many different book studies, they kept flip-flopping them. Sometimes I had a book study on Monday, sometimes Wednesday, sometimes Thursday. So I hated when it was on Monday, because you got the Sunday meeting, the Monday meeting, and then the Tuesday meeting. Now, the good part is you got the rest of the week off, but you're so burnt out, Wednesday and Thursday just pass you by,
Ooh, yeah. No, we never had 3 in a row like that. We might, you might have Sunday, Monday, but then our next meeting wasn't until Thursday.
Right. Our Theocrat Elementary School and service meeting was always on Tuesday.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's rough. I have to back up to something you said, because I think it's an interesting point, and that is that, when Jehovah's Witnesses think about education, or when ex-JWs witnesses, we often talk about how the witnesses view education, how they discourage education, how it's, it's just, this world is a means to an end, so don't invest even your mind into it. I think it also cuts to that point, though. There's also extra discouragement because it's hard to keep up academically and to have to spend all of this time serving, the witness organization, going out and field service and going to all these meetings and preparing for these meetings and having talks and things like that. Your average kid in school isn't having to do, their life outside of school isn't consumed with all of these activities. They may be consumed with some other activities, but at least not these cult activities. And so it's really hard to give fully to education because they take that from you. They've got you too busy to do so.
Yeah, you're too busy to really think about what your future is going to be. So that's why they were down on education. Of course, back in the 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, they still had that mentality of the 60s and 70s, like you don't need to go to college or this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. Now, in my congregation, it was a little bit of a change as far as continuing education, because we had some of the kids that was there, it only had one parent that was a witness, but the other one was not. So that other parent wasn't having it. They were going to school, So but it with me, it wasn't encouraged or discouraged. I just kind of had to do my own thing. A lot of things actually in my life, I just had to figure it out because I didn't have any kind of good guidance. Now I did have some guidance being one of the quote unquote fatherless boys, I did have. There were plenty of brothers there who would tell me things, basic stuff of how to be a man, this, that, and the other. But there was a lot of things that they didn't. I didn't find out a bunch of stuff till I was well into my 30s. But for the most part, it was a loving congregation. It wasn't strict or whatever. There was a predominant family in the congregation because it was just so big. The Jackson family, I can say their name. It was just so many of them. Half the congregation were Jacksons.
So, that happens a lot. Yeah.
And I mean, and that's where a lot of the kids that came from, because the generation before, it was like, I think 8 or 9 brothers and sisters. And all of them, with the exception of 2, went to the hall I was in. One went to, there were 4 congregations in my area. One went to I was in the East congregation. One went to West, and one went to the Petal congregation, which was the town 5 minutes away. But we outgrew our hall. So we had to build a bigger one on the highway, which was only 10, 12-minute drive. But that hall there, it was I was part of the building. I was a little kid, but you know how it is with the Kingdom Hall buildings and everything.
Oh yeah.
I actually liked having responsibilities and everything, because number one, it took my mind off of the meetings. The meetings were so boring. I just blocked it out. That's why I have an attention problem now. I'm just in my own head all the time, because if it's something I don't want to hear, you think I'm paying attention because I'm looking at you, but I'm thinking about what happened last week or something, So that's how that was. That's why when they started giving me responsibilities, I took to it because it gave me something to do. I hated just sitting down there looking at a guy up there that was monotone, talking about the same 4 or 5 things for years and years and years. Got tired of it.
Faces change, but the message is the same, and it does get very monotonous. So let me ask you about that then. So what was life like for you at the Kingdom Hall? Sounds like you were kind of a little go-getter, at least a little bit. You at least wanted something to do because it cured the boredom to some degree. Did you like giving talks? What about service? What was it like for you being a little Jehovah's Witness kid in the Kingdom Hall?
Field service, as a young kid, I actually liked it because that's how I got to know all the people, all the adults and everything. Because I've always been attracted to the older crowd anyway. So I would always ask stories. Like I've always liked the older crowd, listen to the stories of what happened when they would grow up. So that was fun. Of course, as I got older and they started expecting me to do stuff like talk to the people, I hated that. And I always came up with I had the basic presentation. and I used that basic presentation, maybe add a word here or there the whole time. Like, over time they would change their presentations and stuff. I never changed mine because I never wanted to. And because it was just boring to me. I didn't like preaching. And then especially being in the neighborhoods, I opened up the door and one of my classmates answered the door. And I'm sitting here trying to talk to him or her. That was awkward because then I get made fun of at school.
Yeah, that's the worst.
It wasn't really bullying. It was just lighthearted, funny. He's like, Keion came to my house, started talking this, that, and the other. So, and then at the time, that time period, I can't remember the year, but when they was talking about using the school as your own territory, I refused. I wasn't going to do that. So at school, there may have been one or two instances where I had to preach or whatever because the subject came up, and then they would say, "Oh, Keion's a Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah's Witness. What do you believe?" But that I can count on one hand how many times that happened. For the most part, I was just there being a normal kid.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I think it's underrated. People don't understand how much pressure there is on little Jehovah's Witness kids to preach at school and stuff. The little talks that they used to have about, like you said, using the school as your personal territory. You as a child, you have this captive group of other children that you can exploit to preach your message to because they can't go anywhere. And, no kid really wants to do that. It feels bad, but then you're kind of shamed if you don't do it. So it's there is a lot of pressure there to perform in those ways.
And I was a little bit. They kept giving me reminders, about doing this, that, and the other. But it was just some stuff. Excuse me. It was just some stuff I didn't see the point, because I would kind of, in my head, I would play the scenario out different ways. If I did this will probably happen. If I did this will probably happen. So I always took the lesser of the evils. I'm like, I'd rather get talked to or disciplined or encouraged, whatever they call it, by them than being made fun of at school.
Sure.
Because I saw the people at school way more than I saw the people at the hall. So no.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to take that one Bible conversation from an elder at the hall or your parent than to have to live down preaching at school every day. You're going to hear about that.
Yeah, but going back to what you said earlier, me being a go-getter, I think that's what caught the attention of the elders. They probably saw a future ministerial servant or whatever, but they didn't know my motive was just to not be in the seat. So, of course, you got the microphones, you got the Bible reading. That was back when it was just the reading before they started adding, the talk part to it. And no, I'm sorry, it was the talk part. Then later on, it was just the reading. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. So
yeah, they kind of dumbed it down at a point.
Right. So I would do that, and of course, as the years went by, it would go into the last talk, and then, I remember as a teenager, I eventually was behind the literature counter and the sound system, things like that. So they had me doing a little bit of everything. But with it being so many guys, so many teenage boys in that particular hall, I wouldn't do it that often as far as the sound system. I think I may have done it 2-3 times. Now, later on in life, as I went to different halls, I was the only one. But, they were trying to prep me for greater things.
Yeah.
The quote unquote, because I was told that a lot from the servant overseer to the elders and things like that.
Another word for prep is groom.
Yeah.
We were all kind of being groomed to be something for them and inside the congregation. So what was it like then as you went into your teenage years, just in general? How did things kind of progress for you? I assume you probably I'm just guessing, maybe got baptized somewhere in there.
Yeah. As we all got older, everybody started getting baptized at pretty much every assembly. So now at one point, I will admit, like, since that's all I knew, it somewhat felt real to me, even though I saw some cracks in it way back, which I'm gonna go back to an old Bethel story. But around, how old was I? 16. I had told my mother, like, no one, it was encouraged every now and then, they would mention baptism, but I actually made the decision on my own, mostly because I thought I wanted to. The other reason was it was 3 other people getting baptized at the next assembly, and 2 of them were like 4 or 5 years younger than me. So we got 12 and 13-year-olds getting baptized. Here I am, 16, And everybody around my age group were already baptized. So I went ahead and did it, not knowing, not knowing the blood contract it was. So I did that. And
16 is kind of old.
Yeah, compared to other people, yeah.
Yeah, comparatively, and had you waited any longer, the pressure as you get toward 18 becomes even stronger and stronger, because they know they've only got so much time to get you locked in before you might have a chance to get out and explore the world on your own as an adult. So they've got to get you in.
Right. Plus, at the time, you had to be baptized. If you can hold the mics as an unbaptized publisher, but to do everything else, you had to be baptized. That was another reason too. Because as soon as I got baptized, that's when all the other stuff started piling on. The talk for, the sound system, the literature counter, help, seat the friends, what they call that, the attendant. So yeah, all that good stuff.
So any seminal moments that we're kind of glossing over from your childhood or teenage years that you want to make sure that you put out there? Anything that happened or that was instrumental in your life?
Yeah, there's one bad one that I'll mention later, but
okay.
Going back to what I said earlier about I've always seen some cracks in it.
Yeah.
Two major cracks. Number one was, like I told you, that congregation had a big legacy, so they had all the publications from Russell up until then in the library, in the B school room. Every now and then, when my mom would have to go, say, clean up the hall or have a shepherding call at the hall, or I'll just be there, I would go into that room and I'll look at something. Like I told you, I love old vintage stuff. So I'll be like, oh, what's this from 1930? Or what's this? I noticed even back then as a 9, 10-year-old, some of the stuff in those books were not making sense at all for the times. And it was something that I read probably a couple years ago, well, more than about 3-4 years ago, where at one point Russell had actually printed in a book that everybody that had darker skin would go to heaven and have lighter skin. I actually read that. I didn't think nothing of it back then because I was, like I said, I was like 10 or 11. I didn't think anything of it, but when I that triggered it, when I read that about 3-4 years ago, I was like, you know what, he did say that. I remember seeing that in the book. But
there's some horribly racist things in the old publications.
Because I remember I also read stuff how he didn't. Of course, back then you had all the racist stuff. When Black people started wanting to become witnesses, they would finally let them in because they had to, but they would sit in the back. I'm like, okay, that's God for you. But the other thing was I had to be probably about 11 or 12, and we went on the Bethel tour, the bus tour. So we did that. When we get up there to Bethel, I see the factory. Everybody's oohing and ahhing. There's only about 3 or 4 of us kids there. They're oohing and ahhing. I'm just like, okay, I've seen factories before. It's nothing special to me. We're just in New York. So, but I got into a conversation with one of the workers, and I asked them, because growing up so poor, I wanted to make sure I had me some money and had an easy life. So I asked him, I said, you're up here working. He was surprised that I asked this question too. I said, you're up here working, doing all this in this factory. You came from wherever you came from. This is a nice little job. Easy money, isn't it? I said, how much are they paying you? And his eyes just bucked up like that. And he was like, well, we get a stipend. And I was like, okay, what's a stipend? He said, something like an allowance. He said, you get an allowance from your mom? I said, yeah, every now and then. He said, yeah, well, they give us $100 a month. And I was like, now I knew how much money my mom was making. $100 a month did not add up in my head. You got me being a numbers guy. And I looked at him like, you kind of getting screwed over. Well, I don't know how I said it, but I'm like, you're kind of getting messed up here, ain't you? And he said, well, no, it's good to, you're doing work for Jehovah, but we do have to eat a little bit. And so they give us this. So I was like, so you're working for free? And he was like, well, no, I'm working for Jehovah. And I was like, okay, and walked off. I was like, I just walked off.
So like, you're working for free. Now I'm working for Jehovah. Well, kind of working for nothing there.
And that stayed with me the whole trip. I'm like, this guy's stupid. I'm like, so what's going to happen when he leaves Bethel? I'm saying in my head, I didn't ask anybody that, because I was the kind of when I found out a long time ago, don't ask anything, because either you're not going to get an answer or they're going to brush you off. I would ask, this is before I knew it was a rule. I asked the one of the elders, why do there's no beards? Seeing as how we naturally grow hair on our face, and I was starting to. And I said, how come everybody might have a mustache with no beard? And he gave me, and he said a lot of nothing for 15, 20 minutes. So
Yeah,
I
because
was
there's
like,
no good reason.
no. And I mean, I found out way later on, just because Rutherford didn't like him because he couldn't grow one. That's all. So
Well,
I'm
Russell's
like,
followers had beards, so Rutherford liked his followers to not have beards.
mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, whatever. And I didn't know, over the years, I would ask a couple other guys, and they would try to pull out the Bible, but the scripture didn't make sense. Because why would that even be an important subject? Because if you can't have a beard, why are you growing it? Why do guys grow it? You know what I'm saying? So
Sure.
I don't know. So it was small things that let me know it was just crazy. But on the other hand, there was a lot of love in the congregation, and I was taken care of. So I was just thinking it's just some rules that, because well, we was in the Baptist church before we were witnesses, and they had rules too. So I'm just thinking it's just some rules. I'm like it's like a school. You got rules you got to follow. So I didn't think nothing of it at the
Sure.
time.
Well, again, we all people who are in that organization have a shelf,
Yeah.
and we all have doubts and different things, experiences that come upon us that are frustrating and or that don't add up with what else we think is true. And we take those things that don't add up and we just put it on a shelf and we don't look at it until one day perhaps that shelf finally hits its weight limit and comes crashing down, and
Mm-hmm.
suddenly we start seeing the totality of everything that we've put up there. But it's tough, when you're a kid. You need to trust the adults around you. You need to think that they know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about. They're your safety and security, and so you're looking to all these people and they seem to love you and they're treating you nice. Yeah, why not continue? Like you said, kind of a person that kind of goes with the flow, right?
Right.
I think a lot of us were taught to go with the flow, and so, or we just naturally had that kind of personality, and it
Mm-hmm.
got exploited in the system.
Right. Now I was like I kind of read people and noticed stuff, I guess, more than the usual kids. So as I got to know the older crowd, the adults, and the older adults, they were crazy to me with some of the stuff they would be saying, especially when I would go to the door with them in field service, like us having regular conversation, not the crazy stuff they were saying at the door, but just having regular conversation. Their views on things were just, I'm like, I don't know. It just always took me for a loop. So eventually, I knew what to mention. What, and I think that's all witnesses there. You kids, you would know what to talk about, what not to talk about, and kind of keep it light. Because if you get into a serious conversation, you automatically lost for the simple fact that you're
Sure.
the kid. So just because
Well,
you're
we
younger,
were playing a role, right? It's like we
right,
were in
right.
a play and we had to be a certain person in order to continue this play.
Mm-hmm. You have to play the character.
Yeah, play the
Take it till you
character.
make it, pretty much. That's the
Yeah,
saying.
absolutely. So you've got all these doubts, but yet you get baptized at 16. There's things that you're seeing that don't quite add up, and you're having to be someone that you're not at times in order to keep the peace.
Right.
So how do the last few years, 16 is a pretty pivotal time for a lot of people. I don't know then, but uh, you start to maybe drive or get a little more independence. You're getting
Mm-hmm.
closer to 18, the end of school, legal adulthood.
Right.
So what was your path like around that time?
It was kind of all over the place. Like I said, I liked wanting to have my own because I saw my mom struggling, financially all that time. So I always had a little promise that I would find a way to take care of her, or at least lighten the load. So one, let me go back. Let's see. I didn't get a car. I'm sorry, until I was 17, but I started driving at 15. I got my license as soon as I turned 16 because I got tired of being in the house all the time. So there's some funny stories with the driving. One major that it let me know that I could not stay in that town. I didn't want to stay in that small town anyway. It was only 20,000 people. But what let me know that I had to get out of there as soon as I could was I had too many moms. Oh, sorry. I had too many moms around that had eyes all over the place that saw me, especially when I started driving. I could be doing nothing, but yet I would get, my mom would say, well, what were you doing over here? Or what were you doing over here? So one instance was we were at the house. She told me to go pay the cable bill, the Comcast bill, which Comcast was maybe a 10-minute drive. So I didn't have my own car. So I got in her car. I went down there. I paid the bill and I came right back. I didn't stop getting anything to eat or anything. So altogether, I was going maybe 25 to 30 minutes, 10-minute drive there, 10-minute drive back. And you got to wait in line. I get back to the house and she's grilling me, talking about, what were you doing over there at, I forgot the name of the complex, at such and such apartments. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like, yeah, somebody told me they saw you over there by those apartments. You know, you don't need to be over there. There's all kinds of things that go on over there. You don't need to be, I don't care who you know, this, that, and the other. And as I started thinking, I was like, you sent me to pay the cable bill. The cable place is directly next door to the apartment complex. Same parking lot. I mean, it's a walking path right there.
Come on, Keion, what are you doing?
Right. So I was like, what are you talking about? And she just kind of said, oh, she didn't say I'm sorry or anything. So that right there let me know it's, I can't stay here. Like, I can't wait till I graduate. I'm going to figure out something. I cannot stay here. There's too many people in my business. I'm going to pay the cable bill. But on the flip side of that, this is how I figured out you can just hide in plain sight. If I really wanted to do something, I'll just do it in people's face and nobody say anything because they wouldn't see it, which I never understood that. But if I'm going to Walmart or McDonald's, I'm in trouble, because it's next to something, but that's how it was. Everybody was always in my business. I didn't have any kind of privacy.
And did you find that in general, because this comes up a lot, people that I coach, and I've experienced it myself, my wife experienced it too, but did you find that the assumption was always that you were doing something negative? There was always suspicion cast on you and your motives or your actions?
Always. Yeah. I was never doing anything good unless they saw me doing something good. They can't see me just riding around and they see me at an intersection and say, oh, I saw Keion on such and such street, and that be it. Like, no, I saw him on such and such a street over there by, and you know what goes on over there, and they'll just add stuff to it. A lot of the people, or pretty much all of them, they will draw their own truth and conclusions off of one little bit of information. And that became a pet peeve of mine. Just because you see me somewhere doesn't mean I'm doing this, and this, or have done this, and this. Because 99% of the time, I was either going to get something to eat or going to work or going to school, because eventually I got a car, to go to school, something like that. So I was
drawing conclusions off of one piece of information. Isn't that how Jehovah's Witnesses live their entire belief system, by somebody else's conclusion off of one piece of information?
Man, that's how whole 200-page books get written by Jehovah's Witnesses. One piece of information, and they just draw your own conclusion. I had an instance where I was a senior in high school, and Wendy's was right up the street, and it was me and 3 friends, 2 girls and a guy. I was the only one that had a car, so we just jumped in my car, which we were allowed to do. It was a 25-minute lunch. We went right up there to Wendy's, came back, no big deal. Next thing you know, when I get home, it was hell on earth, because somebody was in the Wendy's and saw me. All they saw were 2 girls and 2 guys in the car. And it was just, next thing you know, we were planning something. I'm like, okay. So I got in trouble for that. Not with the brothers, but at home. Around the time I was 15, me and my mom really didn't see eye to eye on too much of anything. So, it mostly have to do with the fact that I'm a guy and she's a woman, and she has her views, I have my views, and I'm a teenage kid. You got that happens with all teenage boys, but
sure.
It was kind of rough at the house. So I would do what I would have to do to stay out of the house. That's why I started working so early. Secularly, at 16, started working at ironically Wendy's. And
yeah, that was my first job too. 16, I worked at Wendy's to get the heck out of the house.
Yeah, that was my first job. I worked there, got humongously fat in the process, all the free food. But yeah, I went from there, and in that town, well, actually, probably in a lot of small towns, all Jehovah's Witnesses work at Walmart. So that's that was my second job, because everybody worked at Walmart. And when I worked there, that was actually a fun job because I was the buggy pusher. But I would always hear around assembly time, when it come from the 2-day and 3-day assemblies, the supervisors hated when that time came because half the staff is gone.
Yeah, everybody's at the assemblies and conventions.
Yep. And they got to let them go for religious reasons or they'll get sued. So,
yep. So you two then were doing the thing where you were trying to work as much as you could to not be around the house.
Not be around the house, yep. And plus, I wanted my own money, try to pay for my own things. Sure. And there was a question you asked. Oh, something else about my teenage years. I had mentioned earlier that I started playing basketball, and my mom, love her to death, but she was kind of a dream killer in this case. I would play basketball down around the block. She wouldn't let me play on the team, of course, for obvious reasons. But I got real good, or at least good enough for my age group, because at the time I was the smallest guy on the court, and I couldn't do anything because everybody was just running me over. So of all people, the neighborhood crackhead taught me how to play defense like Dennis Rodman. So I started studying the game and learned that. One of the coaches stayed right by the court, saw me doing what I was doing, wanted me to try out. I snuck into the tryout, and he wanted me to kind of, stay trying out and, get on the team. Mom put a monkey wrench in that. And because my whole plan was, since I had made a promise a long time ago to myself that I was going to do something to take care of her, my family, things like that, I was going to use that to get a free education. And whatever may come after that, I didn't care about playing for the NBA, but if it would have happened, okay, yeah, I'll take that contract. But my whole thing was to get the education.
Sure.
Because I wanted to do something to where I could make a lot of money to take care of things, but that never happened. So
that's a shame. So you became the lockdown defender, but you weren't allowed to play on the team.
Wasn't allowed to play on the team. So I would the few times I would play, just regular in the street or whatever, I would just annoy those guys because they hated me. I was just kind of like
everybody hates that guy.
Yeah, everybody hates that guy.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I was one of the shorter guys then, so it's kind of like I'm an undersized power forward. And
you take the ball you steal the ball from somebody a couple times, and they start to get real pissed off.
And want to fight.
Yeah, want to fight. Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Well, so you obviously loved basketball. So you were allowed to play with worldly neighborhood kids, non-JW kids,
right?
But just not in an organized manner.
I couldn't play organized for the school or anything because it was the same reason for everything. I would ask every year. It was the same reason. You don't need to hang around kids outside of school, but of course, I'm playing on the street. I don't know, but yeah,
isn't that hanging around your kids after school? I mean,
exactly.
Just with no adult supervision,
right? And so you don't need, and then it'll take away time from the meetings because the games were on Tuesday nights.
Oh, there you go.
That was the main reason. Because I would bring up the fact that we had a few other kids. We had one kid that played football. We had these two twin girls that I was real close with in the Kingdom Hall. They played soccer, but now the reason for that, they were fortunate to have a parent that wasn't a witness. Who was a predominant lawyer in the city. So he was going to make sure his kids had education, did extracurricular activities and things like that. So lucky for them. But and their brother and two sisters. But me, no, I'm at the house until I got old enough to work. It's funny. I don't get how witnesses, you can't associate with kids outside of the school, but you can go work with these 40 and 50-year-olds when you're 16 years old. And whatever happens. I don't get it.
Well, you can get locked into that because it's not about I don't think it's really about the association as much as it is like it's okay to get you locked into a job with little upside. That's okay because that's not going to take you away from them. But if you go start to play sports and get good at things and get an education and things like that, then you might start to see through what they're all about. They can't control you anymore. But if you're working with a bunch of 40, 50-year-olds at Wendy's or Walmart or whatever, with, potentially a limited upward trajectory as far as, the job goes, they can count on having you around. They need to keep you down in as many ways as possible, because if you rise, you'll leave them behind.
Plus, when I started working at Walmart, with all the witnesses that were there were always eyes on me too. But I didn't care much about it because I was working outside. They all worked inside, so I had a little bit of freedom there. But that's how.
Yeah, but
that's
they don't
pretty
want
much
you
how,
to excel at things.
No, because I noticed everything in that area, unless you were a doctor or something, everything was a dead end job.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the problem. If I see half of every congregation working between these two Walmarts, I know there's a problem. Everybody's stuck in their position. And like I said, I just thought differently. I was thinking about the bottom line, which is the bank account. So I'm like, I'm sorry, and then back then I was only making when I started at Walmart, I was only making $5.50 an hour. Then I come to find out the people who's been working there for 20 years were barely making $10, $11. I was, oh, no. That's not going to work.
So obviously, your dreams, well, you said something about dream killing. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses are dream killers. They promote the absence and complete lack of dreams, and many people have never even dreamt. But you who did, if you manage to have one, that's usually crushed with a quickness because they don't want you to get entrenched in that. So where did you go then? What did you do your last years of high school? You were just working, and then I guess you weren't going to go to school to college or of any sort because you couldn't get maybe the financial aid?
Well, I wanted to do there was this computer oriented program at the junior college that was probably about 30 minutes from the house. I wanted to do it because by the time I was in the 11th grade, I suffered a tragedy, which I'll get to in a sec. But by the time I was in the 11th grade, I didn't see the point of a lot of the classes they were making me take. So when I don't see the point in it, I'm not going to put in my effort, especially since I did all these advanced math and science classes up until then. So I pretty much had everything with the exception of 11th grade English and 12th grade English. I had all my credits already, but yet they made me take full schedules. So of course my GPA just dropped.
Because you were bored.
Yeah, I was bored. And it was just a bunch of time that was just wasted. So as my GPA went down, of course, scholarships and stuff kind of went out the window. So when I saw, and another reason my GPA went down is because around on the Christmas break, it was early January in 2000 or 2001, something like that. I think I was in the 11th grade. I suffered a tragedy. One of my older cousins tragically got killed in Northwest Indiana in front of his house at that. And me and him were extremely, extremely close. So, of course, I didn't know anything about therapy or anything back then. So everything was just in my head.
That's brutal.
That affected me big time. So that was another reason why I started having an I don't care attitude. So
you were it's trauma. You kind of got a gut punch there, and it's not always easy to care about school when you just got the wind knocked out of you.
Because especially, like I said, it happened during Christmas break. So I took another week off. I ended up having a 3-week vacation because I went up there to the funeral. I told my mom, because she wanted me to stay at the house and go to school. And I was like, oh no, I got to go to the funeral or whatever. Because I only saw him once every couple of years, when the family got together after I had moved from Indiana to Mississippi. So, me being an only child, my cousins were my brothers and sisters. So
yeah. So let me ask you, I mean, you said something about therapy, and obviously most kids that age aren't going to know about therapy, or a lot of times don't have an opportunity. But did the people around you, so you just suffered a major loss. Did the people in the congregation rally around you? Did your mom rally? Did anybody talk to you and make sure you were okay and, hold your hand through it to any degree?
Not really. I mean, you had, of course, me and mom would talk every now and then, but it wasn't like a whole lot, I was really, I developed this habit of when something happens, even though I know I need attention, I would always put my attention on somebody else. So I was more concerned about my aunt who lost her son. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Instead
we
of
often try to rescue other people
right.
in lieu of rescuing ourselves.
Yeah, I became the
Or
pleaser,
taking care of
So
ourselves.
yeah, so I was more worried about her because I was, my aunt, she was the one that was older than my mom. So she was like another mom to me. So I was pretty much worried about her. And I mean, to this day, I mean, it's been 20 something years, but to this day, of course, what parent ever gets over losing a child? So
yeah,
you never get over that. So, like I said, that affected me. And then when it came to the college choices or whatnot, like I said, in that congregation, college wasn't encouraged, but it wasn't encouraged at all, but it wasn't really discouraged that much. So I was going to take that curriculum, and I guess enough people didn't sign up for it, so they canceled it like a month before I was supposed to start it. So I just said, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to let me take a year off, kind of discover who Keion is. Now, at this point, when it came to the religion, I was doing everything, but I didn't care about any of it. So around, let's see, August of 01, I started, because I graduated in May of 01. So around August of 01, I'm working. I started a new job at a call center. And I was just thinking, what if I, while I'm at work, I'm just thinking like, what if I joined the military some kind of way? I know it'd make a lot of witnesses pissed off, but I saw the financial benefits and the educational benefits, I said, what if I did that? And of course, as the weeks went by, September 11th, 2001 happened. And I saw it on the TV.
Yeah.
I was at an AT&T call center, and we were wondering why we weren't getting any calls. And the supervisor just bum rushed the floor and said, "Turn on the TV." And as we turned on the TV, that's when we saw the planes going in.
Wow.
So that killed my military dream because I already knew what was about to happen. I said, forget that. So I just said I'll work and something's going to come along as far as what I'm gonna do in my life. Because being 18 years old, you don't know. That's
no,
you're still a kid, so you don't really know. Yeah, you're legally grown, but in my eyes, that just means you can go to jail for life or something. That's all. You don't know what to do in life,
It's like getting baptized.
Yeah. You can make that.
You can get in bigger trouble.
But there were some people in the circuit, 8, 9 years old, were getting baptized, and I'm okay.
But they don't baptize infants; they just baptize small children who don't know any better.
Right. Because I always found it funny. As much as the witnesses make fun or target the Catholics, they're just like them, if not worse, with the things they do.
Yeah, of course.
And worse, in my opinion. But yeah, they just kept everything from the media. But yeah, well, that was my life at the time. Now, what was I, 18? Okay, so 19, I started, no, I'm still 18. I started dating a childhood friend. So you know how that goes. You date for a little while. And of course, when you're dating, to the witnesses, they want you to have the view of marriage in mind. I really didn't at the time, but we ended up, falling for each other or whatnot. Now, so around, I think I was looking on the internet and I found something about a school in Nashville, Tennessee, Nashville Auto Diesel College, I'm thinking. And I was like, well, maybe I need to start working with my hands, learn how to fix on some cars. They said the money potential, getting certified and blah, blah, blah. So a buddy of mine at the hall, we decided to go up there together. And after all that, everybody said their goodbyes, helped us move up there. We get up there, but it wasn't like what we wanted, what we thought, in other words. So we ended up dropping out real fast.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, we ended up dropping out real fast. And then that's how I found out I don't like working with my hands like that. And then I didn't like people like that, because being around everybody saying, do this, do that, being all on top of you, that wasn't my environment. So he ended up getting me a job at the mall where he worked at. So I mentioned Tennessee because this is where my life just started making a bunch of different things. So I've actually been disfellowshipped twice, and this Tennessee was the first one. So we get up there, and come to find out, Nashville is way bigger than Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So
yeah, Nashville's a decent sized place.
Oh yeah, and it's fun too. I love it. So we get up there. You got all these congregations around each other, we started going around the different halls to see which one we want to settle in. Of course, we wanted to be around in a hall where there was people our age. So we found one, but everybody hung around everybody from all the different congregations because there were just so many people. Well, come to find out, those kids up there were just, well, pretty much they were all screwing each other. So you know how that goes in big cities. So we found that out or whatever. Didn't think nothing of it much at the time at first, but you know, eventually they're going to suck us into it. So we had our apartment. We would throw little get-togethers at our apartment or whatever, and he actually had got him a girlfriend. Me, I was actually still officially boyfriend girlfriend with the girl in Mississippi, but we, you know, but being so far apart, you know, things just kind of waned off or whatever. So,
sure.
But eventually somebody got mad at one of the boys up there and ended up telling the elders everything about everybody that has been going on for the past couple of years. Now, in our case, it only been a few months, you know, 3 months or whatever. But next thing you know, I'm at the hall, and one of the elders pulled me aside, and I mean, he didn't have to ask me to spill the beans. He told me everything that was said and everything or whatever. So of course, you know that means you got to go into the back room. Now, my first judicial meeting was the weirdest. I haven't heard anybody having a meeting like this ever. Yeah, you had the 3 guys, but they actually had me in there for like 8 or 9 hours. No food, no water, no nothing.
I was a long time. I mean, I've heard of them being pretty long, you know, 6 hours at least. But
yeah. Oh, I was there for a long time. I was there so long. It started around, I don't know, 1, maybe 2 in the afternoon. We actually had to take a break because my roommate's car had broke down, so we were sharing the car. He got off work at 9:30 at night. I had to stop the meeting to go pick him up, you know, and come back.
What in the world are you talking about for 8 or 9 hours?
That's when I really found out that the organization was just mess, because they were asking me questions. I didn't know when you're in a judicial meeting, they ask you questions so personal. Honestly, I thought they were getting off to it. You know?
Okay, so we see it's not, you know, usually on the episodes, a lot of times I'm talking to women and they have been asked these questions, and obviously it's abusive, right. But they do the same thing to men too, don't they?
Yeah, they did the exact same thing to me. I mean, my eyes bucked up. They're asking me questions. Okay, I said, okay, I had sex. That should be enough. They asked me questions of what I did to what I put where, lick this up, this, that. I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? In sex, whatever happens. I mean, you don't need to, I don't know.
Why do you need the play-by-play?
Yeah. So of course that was embarrassing. But as far as why it took so long, they literally, I lost count. I stopped counting at 23. They were asking the same group of questions in different ways. And in my head, I was counting how many times they were asking the same questions, different ways, just changing the wording. And I even asked them that. They didn't give me no answer to that. But you had these 2 guys asking the questions over here on this side, and you had the one young elder or Mr. or certain, whatever he was, they always have one guy that just stares at you without blinking. And I guess that's some kind of intimidation factor or something, which it didn't intimidate me. I'm just sitting there wondering what's up with this weirdo. And they were asking me those same questions so many times. That's why I was thinking they were I'm like, are y'all happy I'm saying to myself, are they happy at home? Because they had pretty wives. I don't know what the heck was going on. So that meeting, and then near the end, before I had to go pick up my roommate, that last little hour there, they, like I said, they knew so much, or so I thought. They actually told me, like, you know how they asked the question, is there anybody else or anything else you want to tell us about anybody, whatever? And I said no. And they was like, are you sure? Because we already know about such and such, such and such, such and such. I found out years later they made that up. But they end up having me accidentally snitch on my roommate. I snitched and didn't even know it because they claim they already knew this stuff. And so
they were just wearing you down.
Mm-hmm. Long story short, they just fellowshipped me. They just fellowshipped him. They ended up disfellowshipping in all those congregations. It was a good 10, 12 congregations. They ended up disfellowshipping about 99% of all the guys, none of the women got this fellowship. None of the girls. They blamed everything on the guys because we're the quote unquote head. We should be smarter. And they pretty much told us that we forced the women into doing everything. And I'm like, whatever happened to that saying, it takes two to tango. So I mean, nobody forced anybody, but that's what went down. And so when that happened, I was still real close with the elders in Hattiesburg. So I would ask them, I asked one, is there anything he can do or what's going on, this, that, and the other? And he pretty much, of course, he said, no, there's nothing you can do. And then he was telling me about the appeal process, but he told me how that would go. And I'm like, what's the point? I'm not appealing the decision. I'm just appealing what they did, like what the procedure, whatever. I'm like, okay. So I just
the appeal process is a joke.
Right. So I told them that when they said they were going to disfellowship me, I told them that I'm like, my mom said she was going to cut me off. I mean, I don't know what to do out here. I make $7.50 an hour. I mean, what can I do? I can't pay anything. I mean, y'all have even helped me out fill my refrigerator up. I mean, what? And they just said, well, maybe you just need to get another job, or they'll just say a bunch of stuff to blow you off. So, of course, I still ended up getting this fellowship. And I just said to myself, I'm thinking, I got my roommate here. We're both out. Let's just tag team this thing. Let's work extra hard, get your car fixed or another car. And so we can pay this rent and everything. And because we had an apartment that was way bigger than what we needed and way too expensive. So I said, let's do this. Let's tag team this. We're going to come back because that's all we knew. I said, we're going to come back eventually, whatever. He threw a monkey wrench in the plan and said, you know what? I'm going home. And left me. He left with, I ended up driving him back because I ended up having to come back too. But he was going to leave me with all those bills, all the rent and everything, because the apartment, I think it was in our mother's names or my mother's name or something like that. So, that's a broken lease.
Somebody's credit's about to get trashed.
Oh yeah, that's credit, broken lease, everything. But he decided he was going to go home for spiritual reasons because he was convinced or coaxed into coming back, getting himself together, yada, 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 yada. So he ended up going back. And of course I had to. I didn't want to, but I did not want to go back to the small town. I liked Nashville, and plus I had an uncle that stayed about 40, 45 minutes away in Murfreesboro.
Oh, okay.
So we ended up having to come back. So life when we came back was pitiful. I mean, you come back, you got all these people and they hardly looking at you. They want you to sit. Now, they wanted you to sit in the back. I refused. I'm like, I'm sitting up here where my mom sits. She's always sat on the second row on the corner of the middle section. So I was like, I'm getting my seat back. So I sat right there. Tried to come back after a few months. And for some reason, they said I'm not ready. And I asked, what makes you think I'm not ready or whatever? Like they knew what was in my head, which of course they don't. So I ended up having to wait a few months. And then
that's what they do. They rarely are going to accept you at first because they need you to grovel.
Yeah, they need you to sweat a little bit. So, but they did end up, it was like close to a year, 10, 11 months, something like that, end up coming back. And so did he. And there were a few other sisters in our hall that had got this fellowship or whatever. That was around our age group. And everybody ended up coming back or whatever. So, I skipped the part. In between coming back, the girl that I was dating in Mississippi at the time, she ended up getting reproved as well because of all that stuff from Tennessee. Because like I said, those guys had me just spilling beans on everything. So anyway, she of course didn't get this fellowship. She got reproved. But now when I got back to Mississippi, me and her still started dating again and everything. Now I'm this fellowship, she's reproved, but so we had to sneak around. So we're doing all that. And then I came back before, I might have the months mixed up because I think before I got reinstated or something like that, found out she was pregnant. Oh. So she was actually in the process of leaving Mississippi, going to live with her sister in Louisiana, Shreveport, I think, that area. So she found out, she was telling me about a week before she was going to leave that her body was going through all these things and she's feeling weird or whatever. So I'm like, oh God. So I told her, I like, look, take a test because you're not going to move to Louisiana with my kid, So the day she was about to leave, the day she was about to leave, I think she was going to get on the bus. That's when she found out she was pregnant. So that ruined her plans. So, and just think about the reaction from her sister, her mother, her father, my mother, and all that. So
it's really sad because, I mean, that may have been stressful for anyone at that age to some degree, but also, pregnancy is usually something that's celebrated and a joyous occasion to a great degree. People throw parties around it, but yet if you're in a certain position in the congregation, it's just looked at as the worst thing in the world.
Especially being
how unnatural that is.
Yeah, because we were only 20 at that, being so young. Me being an only child, growing up as an only child, I wasn't that upset about it. I was looking forward to it. I'm thinking, oh man, I'm finna have my son, this, that, and the other. Of course, it turns out being a daughter, but I'm thinking in the beginning, oh, I'm finna have my son. We're gonna be playing football. I get to beat them up, throw them all around like I do my little cousins. But it ended up being a girl, which of course nothing wrong with that. But
you can play football with your little girl too.
Yeah, she was my little road dog too.
Yeah, there you go.
But when when we went and told her parents or whatever, they asked what we were going to do, and she said, well, of course, we're going to get married and everything. Now I got my head down. When she said that, I kind of looked up like, we are? I mean, that was the first I heard of it. But that's kind of, that's how it is if you get pregnant.
It's the expectation.
Yeah, it's the expectation of it. So I mean, of course we did. We went to the of course, me being disfellowship at the time, we went to the courthouse, and she ended up moving from the country town she was in to Hattiesburg, and that's how we got our first apartment, and then that's how my little family came around. Now, even though I was out at the time, of course, like I said later on, I was being stated, but even though I was out at the time, I mean, our parents, her two and my one, they weren't going to just let us just be out there or whatever. Of course, they would help us out because, of course, we needed money. She wasn't working. Well, she was working. She just transferred her job to where I was at. And then me actually took a second job. So I was working 2 jobs. Still not making anything, of course, but I was doing what I had to do. So sure. That's how that went. So now I'm married at 2-3 months before I turned 21. I'm married with a baby, with a pregnant woman, and then the baby came in May. So I was 21 when the baby came.
Wow. Life changed a lot, didn't it?
Big time. No more fun for me as far as selfish fun or whatever, which no one had to tell me to change my mentality on that. I always had that mentality. I'm like, I got my little baby or whatever. So everything I do now has to be for the family. That was my intention and everything. Of course, I lived up to that, but yeah.
Sure.
But it was the marriage part that was rough, of course. I mean,
you mean that's not a great start to a marriage to be forced into it? Basically a shotgun wedding, so to speak. Yeah. Because shunning is the shotgun.
Like, because I would always say, yeah, we loved each other, and we were actually talking about getting married. Of course, it was going to be a year or so later, but when we found out she was pregnant, we just, we had to just fast forward it. So I kept telling people I was going to marry her anyway, but nobody was listening to that. They just saw what happened. So we ended up getting married, and I mean, of course, in hindsight, you know how marriages go for young witnesses. It was not good. So
yeah, like most young witnesses.
Yes. Yeah. Constant bickering, fighting, or whatever, and stress. But I'm trying to tell the story from a neutral standpoint, because I'm not trying to put everything on her or me. But
it
was both of us.
the circumstance itself is such that you have 2 kids who are getting married, usually with very little life skills, who have been told that the reason to get married is or to find the way to find a good marriage mate is to see, are they regular in meeting attendance? And do they comment at the meetings? And do they go out in the field ministry? And is he reaching out in the congregation? As if those are the qualities that somehow create a relationship between two individuals that is healthy. And I don't know about you. I can speak for myself or my wife. We didn't see any. I mean, our families were dysfunctional as could be. So it's not like we had any great experience or anything to reflect on or draw on to say, well, this is how a healthy relationship looks and works. We didn't have that. So
not at all. I had no kind of life skills, education, none of that. So
throw in a little dash of misogyny and headship in the congregation, which affects not only how the man feels in the relationship, but also affects how the woman feels in the relationship at times. And it's just all a recipe for disaster. Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shunned swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like ex-JWhelp.com, that's ex-JWhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
It is. And it was too. Like me being the peacemaker type, I would do what I have to do to keep the peace and the arguments down and things like that. But come to find out as the year, before that, it had got to the point to where I was working 2 jobs, and then you got all the witness obligations. I started sleepwalking because I wasn't sleeping. Like it got kind of rough. It was one point. It's funny now, but at one point I almost went to work on my day off wearing nothing but boots, underwear, and a tank top. And she had to stop me from leaving. Like, what's going on? And then she finally woke me up. And I was like, oh, that would not have been good for anybody if I would have showed up at work like that. And then it was my day off on top of that. Like, because I was so sleep deprived. When I did go to sleep, stuff started happening,
Oh, yeah, look at that. What an unhealthy way to have a relationship, to be forced into this. You already talked about workaholism. I think it's perfect that you're wearing a shirt right now that says hustle.
Yeah, the motivation.
The workaholism of the witnesses and everything, no time to even sleep. You were set up to fail. All young witnesses are kind of set up to fail.
Yeah. And be honest with you, and this is true to this day, the only thing that really keeps me going are my kids, because we ended up having a son in the process 3 years later. But after, the 2 jobs got condensed to 1 because I forgot, I knew somebody, and they ended up getting me a manager job at a Taco Bell, which that money, that's how little money I was making. That one job took care of the other 2,
Yeah.
So I would do that. That job lasted about not even a year, about 6 or 7 months, whatever, because my daughter, KK, she was just born when it started. So that was around May of 04, May of 04, when I started that job. And so by the end of the year, I was done with that. And that's when I got a job at a factory, electrical factory that was in the next town over, about 30 minutes away. And I ended up being there for 3 years. Now, this whole time I was there, I'm always thinking about how I can do better financially because I wanted to get my family. Let's move somewhere. It didn't necessarily have to be anywhere that we knew anybody, and just prosper. Let's do our own thing. She didn't want that. She wanted to stay right there in that circle in that little small town or whatever, because that was her mentality. And that was also the mentality of her family, come to think of it, because they would tell me, instead of job hopping and always trying to do better, live within your means, work somewhere for the 40, 50 years, she's like, her mother had told me, which I love to death, but she was like, I don't care if it's McDonald's, you just stay somewhere until retirement age. And I had to respectfully tell her, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't stay anywhere for no 40, 50 years, especially if it's a job like that. I just,
Well, again, it is a reflection of their mentality,
right.
Be a Jehovah's Witness, notice that things don't add up, but who cares? Just stay there for your whole life and live that life out. Give up. Just give up.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because I already saw the result of that.
Sure, of course.
The older people in the congregation were poor, broke, and needed help from 10, 20 people to get around or to pay their bills. I never wanted that because
it's tough.
My mom was actually one of the people who would help a lot of the elderly sisters either get to the hall or help clean up their house or something like that, and would take me along for the ride. So I didn't want that or want to be that, Yeah. So I always tried to be better, but it was always discouraged. So in that aspect, as far as financial education or trying to do better for yourself or your family, I had to try to learn all that on my own. And of course, when I didn't know anything, that didn't go too well. But after about, we had moved around. We bounced around residences from that first apartment to her parents' house, to next door to her parents' house, to a trailer out in the country. And I told her, I said, I can't stay out here no more. It was deep, deep, deep in the country. I was like, we got to go back. At least let's go back to Hattiesburg. At least we got a couple of Walmarts out there. At least let's go out there. So, and restaurants, a few restaurants. So we ended up going back, to Hattiesburg. And during all this, after the 3 years at that factory, I ended up trying to I got an insurance job. So someone had introduced me to the commission life. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, if they were just giving me the scenarios, instead of working by the hour, time for money, you will always make more on sales, commission, things like that, which is true, but you got to make the sales.
You're not limited as long as you're good at sales.
As long as you're making the sales. But me being a rookie in that, it didn't work out. So I ended up having to go back to that factory. They'll take anybody back. So that's another reason why I quit and tried that, because I knew that if I had to go back, I could. So I ended up going back there for about a year or so. And then after that, that's in 2007, a little bit after my son was born. He was born in July of 2007. A little bit after that, later on that year, that's when I started working at DirecTV. And that's when I found out I really like working by myself, So what
were you doing?
I was actually an installer. So I didn't have to be around.
I love your story. I love your story. Like, I worked at Wendy's. I worked at a call center. I installed satellite dishes. Yeah, I understand. I understand all of this. I loved basketball, and was pretty decent, but was not allowed to play. I understand all of this.
My lives are so parallel. Actually, I think I remember you talking about some of that in this JW life.
Yeah.
So that's what made me.
It's just funny. Yeah. I tried different jobs. I was always trying to get ahead. Nobody, everybody discouraged it. There's dream killers everywhere. I get all of this.
Yeah, that's what made me. You got different ex-JW podcasts and everything, and YouTube shows. I always stuck with yours because our lives were so parallel.
Yeah.
But I was an installer at DirecTV, and I fell in love with it because number one, the job was easy. Number two, I didn't have to see my supervisors or whatever, but once a week, unless I needed them for something out on the job. And it was just easy to me. So I ended up sticking with that job from 2007 on and off. I got fired, quit and everything. I had 5 or 6 different stints, but pretty much from 2007 to just last year, I was at DirecTV. I had a couple of stints where I did Comcast for a few months or whatever, but I always ended up coming back, and they always accepted me back because I was one of the best techs, So that became kind of my bread and butter. Now at DirecTV is when the marriage actually started going just way, 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 way down. Because me being gone in strangers' houses or whatever brought out some insecurities with her, accusing me of this, that, and the other. And with the factory, and as far as missing meetings and stuff like that, that started actually at the factory, because at the factory I would work a week of day shift and then the next week would be overnight. So obviously, if you're working overnight, you can't make 2 other meetings. So that would cause some of the brothers, of course, understood, but some didn't. The wife didn't. Like, you need to start making the meetings, yada 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 yada. But I stuck it out for a few years. So some of the brothers didn't. We had switched congregations to the congregation that she grew up in, and that congregation didn't have a lot of. How can I put this? They didn't have a lot of smart individuals. So with me being able to read real well, give decent talks, do the responsibilities and stuff like that, they hated when I missed a meeting, because they literally had me doing everything. I was doing everything except giving service meeting talks and 45-minute talks at the time. Well, I think it was 30 minutes, I guess, by then, but I was doing everything. Like, so I kind of didn't, it was tiring, but I kind of didn't mind it because I never had to pay attention to the meeting. The only time I really had to pay attention to the meeting was when I was on the stage reading the Watchtower, and I had to try to not go to sleep up there, because it would be some instances where I worked Saturday night into Sunday morning, didn't have to go to the meeting and read the Watchtower. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so like it was constant stress, fighting. Could I have handled things differently? Yeah, but also on the other side of that, you got to have 2 people willing to change things and everything. So it was just a lot of unnecessary fussing and fighting, and I don't like fussing and fighting. I do what I can to diffuse the situation, but sometimes that didn't work. So it'd be just a lot of things going on. So now with the DirecTV days, things got worse. We got 2 kids now, and she, for the most part, she was working, but it would be like part-time, things like that. So everything kind of fell on me. But I was making decent for the time, but it was just, we just weren't getting along. It was just a personality thing. Now, we did have a incident where it would be some people that'd be like, I'm surprised you never got into it with her physically. I'm like, well, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number 1, I don't believe in hitting women. Number 2, my grandmother threatened me with my life. My grandmother threatened me with my life. Like, if I ever hit my wife, she would kill me. So, and Granny's still alive. So, so she was playing, but she was serious. But I already know I'm not getting physical with anybody. Now, we did have this one incident to where we were arguing so bad. We actually ended up moving into the house that I grew up in. My mom had moved to a different house. So yeah, it had got remodeled, and the lady actually, the lady knew of me and gave me first dibs on the house. So yeah, I said, I'll take it. That's my old house. That's, nostalgia. So we were in the house and we were arguing so bad, and I was so sick of it. I told her, just get out. I didn't pick her up, throw her out, nothing. I just said, you need to get out. I'm sick of this, yada, yada, yada. So the argument got so bad, she picked up a tool, one of my DirecTV tools, multi-tool, which was solid steel, pretty much, threw it at me as I was walking away. And when I turned around, it hit me right in the face, broke all this, so. And that was actually the first time I've been knocked out. I was out. And when I came to a few seconds later, it was, we had very light colored carpet, and there was my blood from my nose and my eye all over the place. So, of course, she was sorry and stuff like that, because I wasn't supposed to turn around. But either way it go, I was going to get hit. Yeah, exactly. Either way it go, I was going to get hit. But that kind of changed everything for me mentally, as far as wanting to even be in the marriage, whatever, because I had to get stitches and all that good stuff. And
how'd that go? I mean, it's hard to walk into a hospital. You can't really.
Yeah, I went to the ER, and it was kind of hard to tell them what happened, but of course I had to. And then my mom was upset, and she didn't do anything, but she was just upset at the situation. Now, my cousins, who were not witnesses, because the only witnesses in my family is me, my uncle, his one of his daughters and my mom. So my cousins were ready to do some damage. You know, I had to call them off, you know, because I didn't want those problems. So
And that's not going to help anything either.
yeah, it really wasn't. So I just like, no, don't. There's no reason for y'all to come down this way. We're talking the ones from Indiana and the ones in Mississippi. No, just leave her alone, yada yada yada, because it's gonna cause some retaliation. Heck, she got 3 brothers. You know, I don't need those problems. So, so when I had to go to the meeting with this black, it wasn't a black eye, it was a black face. You know, so. I had to go to the meeting like that.
It broke all this up.
Yeah, all this was tore up. So
yeah,
and it healed pretty good, except my septum's deviated to this day. I need to get that fixed. But having to explain to the people in the hall that I just said I lied. I said I had an accident at work and a tool, da 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 da, whatever. So I just went with that. They bought it. At work, I pretty much said the same thing, but at work, those guys make fun of it. We always made fun of anything. So it didn't hurt me or anything mentally. We would just all make fun of it. I kind of made fun of it myself or whatnot. So I got over that. That took a few weeks to heal up. But it didn't change anything in the household. Everything was still fussing, fighting, things like that, stress.
But yeah, it's not okay to throw things at people's faces.
No.
Or even the back of their head.
Because I used to think
that would be seen as domestic abuse, no matter, if a man did it, so it's domestic abuse.
Right. I always thought if I hadn't turned around and she would have hit me in the back of the head, what would have happened? Because that little area right there where your neck is, that's your spinal cord. There ain't nothing covering that. So I don't know. But
it's bad. It's bad news regardless of how it goes.
Right. So, I got through that. And with the fussing and fighting, and we in the middle of all this fussing and fighting, now this is the part where, justified or not, which is not, it's still wrong on my part. Of course, if I'm not getting happiness at home, you're going to, somebody else is going to sneak in there. So there was and plus being accused of sleeping around anyway, when I wasn't at the time, I was like, forget it, so I did get it.
Sounds like you wanted out.
I did. So I didn't care anymore. So yeah, there were some people that snuck up in there. I had, whether it was a friend of mine or old classmates or whatever. So it was bad. It had got to the point to where on my way home from work, I would actually go over one of my friends' houses. I mean, we didn't necessarily do anything all the time, but I would just go there for comfort and just to chill for about an hour before I went home to get ready for the BS, because it was a lot of times it was just.
Here you are again wanting to escape your own house.
Yeah. I didn't have peace in my own house. And so it was a long time. It was many months. Like as soon as I get into the house, it was bickering or whatever. Like the funniest argument that we had, I don't even remember what it was about, but it started with me accidentally stepping on her foot when I came into the house because she had opened the door for me because she just happened to be right there. She saw me pull up and I accidentally stepped on her foot. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. And for some reason that turned into a 2-day argument. I was like, golly, what did I do, So the only thing that really kept me sane were my kids. I would always play with them. And that's kind of kept me grounded because I had my little girl who was smart as a whip. I had my little boy who was secretly smart as a whip. They both have my personality, but she's more outgoing than he is. I'm the only one who knew how smart he was because he was sneaky, like I am. So
quiet smart.
Yeah, the quiet smart guy. And to this day, he's 15 now. So yeah. But I wanted out real bad. And with all the extramarital stuff or whatnot, I decided that I would try to make things right. And I didn't go to the brothers or anything for that because I didn't want those problems. So I said, let me try this on my own. So we ended up just trying to go on little vacations and things like that. But it really didn't work. Yeah, we were fine while we were on vacation, but as soon as we get back to reality, it was the same old stuff. So I just kind of gave up. And trying to see what happened first. Oh, what really let me know that I really wanted to leave was I had got home. No, I mean, I'm sorry. I had woke up. I was going to take my daughter to school. And my son, who was a baby, um, she wouldn't let me hold him. So I'm like, what's the deal? Let me hold my little baby boy. She wouldn't let me. So that turned into a big fight. Now, what will make me fight or argue rather is something that has to do with my kids or someone that's real close to me. So that set me off. We start fussing, bickering or whatever. She ends up calling the police. She ends up calling the police on me. And she was while she was on the phone saying, "Oh, he's holding me against my will, this, that, and the other," and I'm in the background like, "What are you talking about?" No, I'm not. So 911 dispatcher, they have no choice but to dispatch the police. That they have to when they get a call. So the police was dispatched. In the process, I go take my daughter to school, and I just said, I didn't do anything. So I went back to the house. Reluctantly, I went back to the house. I get to the house, the cop's already there. And she's saying her side. I show up. He's surprised that I show up. I tell my side. Long story short, after about an hour or so of bickering, he took my side because I wasn't a threat or anything, because he just happened to be a guy who went through some similar stuff with his ex-wife. But he did give us a warning that if anybody has to come back out here besides him, or even if he had to come back out, we're both going to jail. Because back in Mississippi, back then, police get called for a domestic dispute, both go to jail, and they'll decipher who's at blame later. But everybody's going to jail. So luckily, he just let everything go. Now, when that happened, that's when I just left for the day, and I think I went to my mom's house or something like that. But that was a pretty bad experience. But
well, yeah, I mean, not gonna go to jail for nothing,
right?
So what do you do? Because none of this sounds good, and it doesn't sound tenable. So are you at that point? I mean, was there a straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak?
Well, that was kind of it, but
yeah.
I kept trying to fix it because I didn't want a broken home. I kept trying to fix it, but then the stress was just overwhelming. So what happened was I had a health scare with all the stress and everything. I had got fired from the Reg TV. And so money was not coming in, and I was just trying to, there would be some guys who would let me help them clean up or something like that. And I would make a little money that way, but very little, wasn't enough to sustain anything. So the stress of not being able to take care of my house was weighing on me as well. So we had this assembly, a 2-day assembly, and the stress was getting so bad to me that a few days prior to the assembly, I noticed that the only time I developed these bad headaches, and the only time the headaches would stop would be if I drank like a Red Bull. And I don't even drink energy drinks, but something told me to do that. So I started drinking Monsters and Red Bull to ease the headache. But of course, after the stuff digests, the headache is back. So I knew something was wrong. Why I didn't go to the doctor, I don't know. But we get to this assembly, and I got my son in my hand. He's asleep. I got him cradling him. And I just felt myself passing out. And as I started to lean forward to pass out, I saw one of the brothers in my hall, and I waved him over. And he saw me falling, and he grabbed my son, got him, and he was like, "What's wrong?" And all I could say was my head. That was the only thing I could say. So I was out in front of 800-900 people, because we were on the floor. So a lot of people knew me too, so they was wondering what was going on. So he and his son dragged me to the back, and the nurse and everything. My blood pressure ended up being 200 and something over 100 and something. I mean, it was way up there.
Yeah.
So I had hardly been eating too. So I hear all this. I can't talk. So I guess it's true what they say: when you start to pass away or die or whatever, you can still hear stuff. I heard everything that was going on, but I couldn't respond. So they got me, they got a hold of my mother, threw me in my mom's car, drove me to the hospital, and which fortunately was only like 5 minutes away. But all of a sudden, when we get to the hospital, we get into the room, I all of a sudden start feeling 100% better. And I just kind of jumped up, and I was like, "Look, we can go, this, that, and the other." They had to force me to stay there, so I can get evaluated. And so just kind of find out I just had super duper high blood pressure. And And I think, if I remember right, I think they said I had I forgot the actual name for it, but a mini stroke. Because I felt
like a TIA.
TIA, yes, that.
Yeah.
So now keep in mind, I'm only 28 at the time, so I know I'm too young for all this. So yeah, because I remember the left side of my face tingling, getting numb, like I had Bell's palsy. Actually, I thought that's what it was, Bell's palsy.
Yep.
But it wasn't. So when I found out that it was mini stroke, I was like, look, I got to do something. They sent me. They made an appointment with my regular doctor back home, and he was telling me like, look, I've been knowing you for a long time. What's going on? He actually stopped being doctor and just asked me what's going on in my life. And when I told him, he's like, I'm not telling you what to do, but you really need to do something to get rid of that stress. I was like, yeah, okay. So I tried again, calm things down, make stuff work. It really didn't. So we my final shot in making things work was we decided to take a vacation to Florida. And it was actually, we went to the same spot, Panama City Beach, our first vacation from way, way back. We was like, look, let's just start over, rekindle some things, whatever. I was a little nervous about going for one reason, which is funny because the last time we went, that's how we got our son. So, but I was like, look,
that's not going to fix things.
No, it's not. But I said, look, let's start over, do this, that, and the other. Now, while we were there, everything was fine. Even about, I say, a week after we got back, everything was kind of fine, normalizing this, that, and the other. But it quickly just dropped all the way down. And long story short, about 2-3 weeks after that, I ended up having to move out. I had to move out, and I got my own place about 10 minutes away down the way. So did all that. And in the process of all this, I don't know if I was this fellowship before I moved out or after, but the story of that is one part about this story that's weird. When I got this fellowship the second and final time, because I'm still out, I told the brother, I called one of the brothers up, and I ended up telling on myself because I wanted to try to make things better. And I'm thinking, I'm repenting, this, that, and the other, that, but based off the first time, I was repentant the first time. It doesn't matter. So
no, it doesn't. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. It's just what they feel at the time.
Yep.
And with that thing in Nashville, I come to find out the PO, which is the Kobe now, but the PO, he didn't like anybody. So he was going to this fellowship everybody anyway, which he did. But back to this story here. The brothers, this time I'm in my own environment. The 3 brothers that was in the judicial meeting, all knew me from when I was a little boy. So I guess that's somewhat of an advantage because, I'm trying to make things better. But one thing I noticed when they found out that I told on myself, a couple of them gave me a weird look. I was getting weird looks from a lot of guys in the congregation. Like, he told on himself. Like, so I'm thinking like, have y'all done something and never said anything or what? I mean, I don't know. But everybody was pretty much like, you're stupid for telling on yourself. I'm like,
okay, that tells you some people there got some secrets.
Yeah, I'm like, it's going to be some serious secrets around here.
Yeah,
but
they got some secrets.
Yeah, so in that meeting, I would tell them all the stuff that I had been going through over the years, which some of it they knew, but, some of the stuff they didn't because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So, and they were asking me, like, do I still want to be with her and stuff like that? And I said, no, I can't take it. This, that, and the other. But they turned it all around and blamed everything that has happened to me over the years on me. Simply for the fact that I'm the quote unquote head and I'm the guy. I control everything in the house, what my kids do, what the wife does, and everything is my fault. So I even broke it down. I even asked them a dumb question. I was like, so you telling me my daughter being, she was real little, however old she was, if she does this, that's wrong in school, just being a kid or whatever, she does something wrong. I said, that's my fault too. And they said, yeah. They said, everything is my fault. I'm like,
Because Jehovah's Witnesses are all about control.
Mm-hmm.
And why can't you control everybody and everything? I know my dad was told at times to get my mom under control. Yeah. Because she had questions and that was not acceptable for her to ask some of the questions she had.
Right. Now, when they told me that, that was, like I said, I never liked the meetings or the routine or whatnot. But when they told me that, they didn't know that. But at that moment, I was pretty much PMO. At that moment, I was like, forget this. I'm going to just do my own thing.
So I guess for those who might listen and not know what PMO is, you were physically in the cult but mentally out. So you were there in body only, going through the motions, but mentally you weren't into it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of that anyway, but right then I was completely done with it. I hadn't exactly woken up yet, but I was just out of it, and I'm like, this is stupid. And that was as much as deep as my mother is into it to this day. That was the one thing that she agreed with me on. When I told her that they said every little thing was my fault, that was the one thing she agreed with me on. Like, she's like, no, I don't know about all that. And, that's about all she said about it. But I was like, well, at least I got your support on that. But yeah, so I guess they did something that most committees don't do. You know how they make a decision right then and there, tell you to go outside and all that good stuff. And then you come back and, they disfellowship you. They told me to go outside, and they called me back in. I come back in. They actually said, we're going to meet with you again, because they wanted to give me time to break off the relationship I had formed with another young lady. So I was like, okay. Like I said, I didn't care. So we meet again the next week. They asked me, have I ended that relationship? And I told them no, because I did not care. So of course, you're disfellowship, So
yeah.
Because like who I was involved with, I mean, yeah, we did what we did, but she was actually became a good friend of mine. I mean, she was such a good friend to the point to where she was trying to help me keep my marriage together. But when she found out it wasn't going to work, hey, we got involved. So,
sure.
So yeah, that's how that went. So I was disfellowshipped again, and I didn't care. I told my mom, I said, look, if they disfellowship me again, don't look for me to come back. And I've been out to this day, and that was like good 12 years ago or so. So I ended up moving, to that new apartment or whatnot. And I was just living. I had got fired from DirecTV, but I started at a different contracting company that did DirecTV. So I'm in that apartment, and around this time, I don't know if this is embarrassing to say or what, but it'll help somebody out there. This is around the time when I started living by myself that I kind of developed a sex addiction, because I was lonely. You got.
So this is something that can be quite common for a lot of people who leave Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's you've been repressed sexually your whole life, and then suddenly you have more opportunity, and some people become very sexually hyperactive, and then some people shut down sexually. It just, people are at different ends of that spectrum.
Yeah,
it's fairly common, honestly.
Oh, it is? Okay. It was a combination of, like I said, being lonely. Of course, I had my kids at my house a lot, so nothing happened then, of course. But when I was lonely, and the fact that I was getting attention from any and everybody, because I'm in this apartment complex, and they see a single guy keeping up a household by himself, has his kids a lot by himself, feeding them, and also, when the other little kids are running around, when I buy some food, I would get, cook or feed them as well. So that I started getting attention from all the single mothers around the complex, and things like that. Plus word had got out that I was getting, that I had broke up with my wife. And all of a sudden now old classmates that I used to have a crush on that didn't give me the time of day from 10 years prior. And so it was just all that, plus me being messed up in the head, trying to get myself together. So,
well, sure, you can even escape into sexuality. You had a lot going on and probably didn't know how to deal with it or handle any of that. And this happens a lot.
Yeah, so that's what happened there. So fast forward a little bit, I had that apartment for about a year, and it was close to, I had quit DirecTV and I started working offshore. Now, the offshore thing lasted a few months, but it didn't last long at all because they had to get rid of some people. So, the last one hired is the first one that's going to get fired. So, ironically, I ended up getting fired November 30th of that year. what was that, 2012. The next day, December 1st, 2012, I turned 30. So that was like the best birthday gift ever, I tell you. The best birthday gift, turning the big 3-0 a few hours after you get fired. So needless to say, that was depressing. And around this time, me and my dad had got into contact and started forming a bond. So he was, born and raised in Chicago. That's actually how my mom met him. So he was retiring, and he ended up moving from Chicago to Houston, Texas. So I was like, let me, I don't have a job or nothing right now. So I said, let me just come out there and visit. I said, I told him, to be honest with you, if I like it, I might just move out there, because I can't stand Mississippi. I've been stuck here an extra 10 years longer than I wanted to be. So I go out there, had no idea how big Houston was. I mean, woof, humongous. So
yeah, Houston's a big city. Yeah.
Very big. It's the third largest in the country. So
I've just driven through there, and they say everything's bigger than in Texas, but just the car dealerships there are massive. They're so much bigger than anything I've ever seen anywhere else. It's everything there truly is large.
It's big. Like, the actual city itself is around 2.5 million people, but once you add all the suburbs, which are a few minutes away, over 6.5, almost 7 million people, and people are moving in here out the woodwork. But when I moved here, when I visited here, I liked it, and I was like, you know what? I know there's more opportunities out here. I'm gonna end up just moving. So he had already moved out here, but he hadn't had a place yet. He was staying with his daughter-in-law. So I moved out here by the end of that month, end of December of 2012, and around January of 13, something like that, we ended up getting a place together. And that's how.
Now this is you and your dad?
So he moved from Chicago to Houston. I moved from Mississippi to Houston. Okay. Now, granted, we was already, kind of close, but that's when we really got close.
Well, yeah, I did have a question. You said you kind of connected with him around the age of 30. Did you know him and have much of a relationship with him previously at all, or
a little bit? My earliest memory of him was when I was about 5 or 6, a little bit before we left to go to Mississippi. I remember seeing him then. He visited us in Mississippi when I was about 11, 12, stayed for a few days, and he brought one of my older brothers and sisters with me, so me and them are real, close. And then after that, he and my mom actually reconciled when I was around 16. I had just started working. They had actually reconciled, and he stayed with us. It didn't last long at all. He stayed with us a couple months, it didn't last long at all, but they ended up breaking up again. So of course, I always knew who he was, whatnot. The reason we were able to mesh together when I was 30 was because this is one good thing. Neither one of them never bashed the other to me. Whatever happened with them stayed with them. Of course, I found out later on all the stuff that happened, but it's just stuff that happens in marriages,
sure.
Whatever. So, but they actually have a funny love story. They met and were married within a few months of meeting, which was kind of, love at first sight. Sure. As big as Chicago is, they ended up living in the same complex and didn't know it. So that was back in like 79 or something like that. That's but funny. Yeah, so the marriage didn't work out, but they got me out of it. So
sure.
So when he moved from Chicago to Houston, I moved from Mississippi to Houston, and we got our own place. It was just like a double bachelor pad, So we lived together for about 5 years, bouncing around different places in different parts of Houston. After that 5th year, I had started getting close with one of my neighbors, but I kind of wanted to be on my own anyway. So I had told him about all that. He wasn't too favorable on it or whatnot, but I needed to get out on my own. I like, here I am, 30, 33, 34, 35, however old I was. And I'm like, I need to live by myself so I can figure out who Keion is. You know what I'm saying? So, we separated, went on separate ways. He moved to Fort Worth, which he used to live at for a time way, way back. So he moved to Fort Worth, Dallas area. And I'm still here in Houston. And around that time, me and one of my neighbors at former complex I was at was getting kind of close on the best friend level. And she actually grew up similar to you and I, except she was Seventh-day Adventist. You know, they got their rules
Oh
too.
yeah, they got a lot of the same things going
A
on.
lot of the
there.
same rules. So me and her kind of bonded over that. And when I met her, she was like 9 months pregnant or whatever. And so I was around when the little boy was born. So he was always my little buddy, you know. But you know, I was cool with her, her daughter, her son, and she was married at the time. So you know, me and him were actually pretty cool. Now, at the time, a little bit after her son was born, she got sick, and I found out that we found out that she had cancer. And this was like her third battle with it. So you know, if it comes and goes like that, you know, around the second or third time, you kind of know what's going to happen. But
That's bad.
yeah, so you kind of know what's going to happen. So I didn't know this, but her marriage was already on the decline big time anyway. Of course, that's none of my business. You know, whatever happens in their house happens in their house. But I found out because she would it was brain cancer, and so it would cause her, she's got patches of her brain that wasn't there, so nothing's connecting, so it will cause her to have seizures. She would have these seizures. The husband isn't home, but the daughter knew to come right. I was right next door. She would knock on the door, bang on the door, have me come over there to help her, you know, control the seizure so she won't wreck anything or potentially hurt the little boy or whatever. So, and not know it. So I would be over there a whole lot more than I was comfortable being over there at another man's house, you know.
Sure, I understand.
But it was a health thing. So I'm over there, you know, helping her control herself or whatever, making sure the kids eat and stuff like that, because some of the seizures were just debilitating. She couldn't move or do anything. I just had to make sure she would just be still on the couch. So at the of course, when you're over there for hours at a time, you just talk. So when she was in her right mind to talk. So, you know, we just ended up being just the best of friends, you know, didn't do anything. So I'm like, I know everybody, I'm, you know, whatever. But like eventually they broke up, and, you know, our friendship kind of blossomed into a full-fledged relationship. So we were together for about 3 years or so, something like that. But that ended up being her cancer ended up going in remission miraculously off of an experimental drug that's not even approved. They told her that, look, it's not going to hurt you, but it either help you or not, because if it doesn't work, you already know what's going to happen in 4 or 5 months. It ended up working.
Good.
So she got better, you know, and we had our relationship or whatnot, and ended up being, her being in my life ended up being one of the best things that happened to me, because it helped me get myself together mentally, helped me understand other people's perspective on things, and plus how she grew up, seeing as how we grew up kind of similar, you know, it was just, you know, it was a nice little match. And I actually started waking up around this time, and I'll tell you what happened. There was all of a sudden wake up, because she knew Jehovah's Witnesses were full of crap, just like, you know, a bunch of other religions. And so I was out. I wasn't mentally in or out. I just didn't care. You know, I was just trying to live my life. So she ran into this YouTube video by a young couple called True Faced. It was actually TrueFaced. They don't do videos anymore, but it was a young couple, I think from Detroit. And it was like a 2.5 hour video on the history of the religion, the witnesses, how they all got started from Russell up until now. And there was a part in there, we were talking about the beards earlier, when they got up to that part, and I found out the real reason for that, along with other stuff, and it just dawned on me that I was in a cult this whole time. And I was like 20 years of my life down the drain. All the goals that I had, all the things I wanted to do, couldn't do it because of that. And I pretty much had a mini breakdown, and she had to control me because I was just crying and everything. So I could not believe that. And then after that, I immediately started thinking about my mom and other people. I'm like, do they not know this? How can they not see this? But then I started thinking, I didn't see it. So, you know.
Right. We often forget what it's like to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses, right?
Right. And I wanted to tell my mom, but she actually stopped me, you know, because, you know, at the time I got to thinking, And like, I don't know if I want my mom to wake up at all or not, because if she has the same reaction I do, she's going to be like 30 plus years down the drain, because she's in her 60s now. I really don't know, but yeah, when I found that out, I hated life, So I'm like, all these things I could have done or could have been that I know I had the potential of doing or being, and it was stopped. Mm-hmm. So it took a while. Like to this day, there's so many Kingdom Halls around me. I roll by them and just, like, oh, I wish I could just blow them up. Make sure nobody's in the building. Just blow them up. But so when that happened,
definitely a lot of people have been hurt by the organization. A lot of lost time, a lot of lives lost to busy work and workaholism inside the cult. A lot of potential that has been lost, and it is really sad. The good news is that as long as you're still around and breathing, you've got opportunities to make something of yourself, maybe even to get opportunities back in different ways. They don't have to be totally lost. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe there's some way to get back some of the opportunities that you did miss, but it is a gut punch when you realize that you gave, a lot of your best years to something that means nothing.
At all. Means nothing at all.
It's like being pranked for 30 years or whatever. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's like, remember that old show Punked? It's like Ashton Kutcher was there the whole time. Yes. You just got punked,
Yes. But it's not so funny.
Yeah, it's not. It's really bad, because I actually started feeling sorry for a lot of the people that I grew up with. Now, with the people that were around my age, a lot of them aren't really doing anything with it. I mean, there might be a couple of them that are. There's a few that are, but for the most part, most of the people my age and younger that I knew, they're not doing anything with it, which is good. So
yeah, that is good. That is. I mean, hopefully they'll wake up fully if they're not fully awake, right, and give them a chance to live a different type of life. That would be awesome. And at the end of the day, you don't know about your mom. It's up to her. It's her life. If she wakes up, that will be because she's ready on her own. And I spoke to somebody the other day. They wrote me a message. I got an email from somebody. Their mom is 80 years old and is waking up. And
that's beautiful.
It's really pretty cool. And yeah, you can always look back at what was left behind, but I've always kind of been of the mindset myself, and everybody has their own opinion. But for me, I'd rather live one day as a free man than spend my entire life in prison. I'd rather have that one golden day where I got to get out at the end and be myself for a minute, or smell the fresh air, or go around and look at things or whatever, than to live my whole life in prison. So I don't know. I always hold out hope that some of these older ones will wake up and have a minute of freedom. You only get this one life that we know of. Might as well taste freedom at some point.
You're right. Well, that being said, like, I'm kind of on the fence about wanting her to wake up. On the other hand,
I understand it's not good. It's not all good or all bad. I mean, there's stuff to work through no matter what age you wake up at.
Because like the main reason I would want her to wake up is because growing up as an only kid and you only have your mom and then she shuns you.
Sure.
That's a little difficult,
No, it is.
So
it's not natural.
Yeah. So like, and then having to learn everything the hard way. And like I said, there's stuff I learned as far as being a responsible man that I've learned after 35, that I should have learned at 19 or 17, stuff like that.
The stunting that we all endure.
Yep. You can, our lives are so parallel. You can attest to it.
Yeah, understood.
But yeah, so where was I? Oh, okay. So in the process of the waking up and just I had this deep embedded anger at life for so long. And in the process of all this, I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with my ex-wife was causing unnecessary problems with the children, because me being a couple of 7 hours away, I would get them with the divorce. I get them every summer and every Christmas holiday, but we started having problems with that. And then on top of that, my girlfriend's cancer was back again. So, I had to deal with the seizures and the health problems with that. So I got a lot on me. Now with the children, that's my backbone. Without them, I probably wouldn't even be here. But every time, like it was a few times, they would come. It would be some kind of discrepancy over where to pick them up at, or something like that, unnecessarily. Like we would have things planned out, and then stuff would change while I'm on my way to get them. Or, it's only so much a woman can do with raising a boy. There's a lot of them to do a great job, but they're not a guy. So I would at least suggest, like, let me at least get my son, Kendrick, to stay out here with me. It was always a hard no. So that would cause a rift between us for so long. Never could co-parent. Like I saw other people who were divorced co-parenting and getting along just fine. Never could get to that level. Still can't. So at one point, though, I guess he was just causing so much stress on her that she actually entertained the idea. So at the time, I had some job offers that were lucrative, but it would have required me to be gone for weeks at a time. So I'm thinking I'm about to get my son. Forget those jobs. So I let those offers go. They were truck driving jobs. I had just got my CDL. I had let those job offers go. And I'm thinking I'm about to get my son, but then she pulled the rug out from under me. And she changed her mind at the last minute. And that made, I don't want to use the word hatred, but that disdain,
Sure. Yeah, I understand. Large amounts of frustration.
Yeah, we'll say that. But yeah, like that really just did me in, because she became one of those people that would use the law, I guess, or Mississippi law to her advantage. How some when it comes to family stuff, some states favor the mother no matter what, and I've seen that happen. I've seen some guys just get screwed over with either child support or visitation or stuff like that. So, and I didn't have the money to pay for a decent lawyer, to try to get it back. And that's one I've always hated the judicial system, because it depends on how much money. Your money depends on your freedom.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Money makes the world go round.
Exactly. You can, there's murderers who can get away with stuff if they got the right amount of money, but you got somebody who steals a Snicker bar out of Walmart, he gets 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
But that just became bad. Like, so that's always been something hanging over my head. Like, I'm just glad now that they're older, 18, well, about to be 18, about to be 15. So, the clock's ticking on that. So, the children, thankfully, they were never deep into the witnesses. They kind of woke up on their own, or was never in there, because they would ask me questions. And because they really don't want anything to do with it, people will blame it on me. The witnesses back home will blame it on me. And they don't, of course, since they're not speaking to me, they don't believe me. They don't believe the fact that I put out there that I didn't say anything. They figured this out on their own because it's obvious, but so at least I don't have to deal with that. But when it comes to the stress of them coming here, going back, it's bad. It's bad. It's still bad. So
I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible, because it's bad on the kids too.
Exactly. So that
there's no reason for
problems. Yeah, that caused some behavioral problems in them, because we're real close, joined at the hip. So they want to be around dad more. I even suggested let them stay here for a couple of years. They come out there for a couple, whatever, something. But it's no. And so we got that aspect of my life. And then with the girlfriend at the time, she was sick again, and she ended up, in the long run, she ended up pulling through with that. And that relationship ran its course. We were best friends, and then we became in a full-fledged relationship. And we just kind of figured out, it was just best to go back being best friends. So sure. Luckily we were friends first. So I think that's like the only relationship in my life that ever happened like that. So, we still talk almost every day. So, and then we've been broken up for a couple of years now. So
imagine that. Relationships don't have to end in a non-classy meltdown of hatred and bitterness. Sometimes people can end a relationship and still move on and be good to each other. You don't have to hate each other. It doesn't, Jehovah's Witnesses always see relationships as this all or nothing binary thing. You're either in or you're out. You're either with us or you're against us and shunned. But sometimes we can have relationships that end, and yeah, you can still be friends. It doesn't have to be the end of the world.
And a lot of people that I talk to can't believe that when I'm like, yeah, my best friend, yada, yada, yada. And then if it comes out that we used to be in a relationship, like, how are you best friends? I was like, look, the relationship never changed. The only thing that changed was the physicality. We still talk about the same things and everything. I'm like, she's with somebody else who became a friend of mine. They have a little girl now who's about 4 months. And, I mean, we're all good. They're waiting for me to come out to visit,
So then, Keion, you've gone through a lot in your life. You woke up in a somewhat unconventional way in little ways, with the whole Seventh-day Adventist thing. And then you started learning the truth about what you had been involved in. Have there been other resources that have really helped you along the path as you've been learning more and more the impact of this and where it all comes from?
Yeah, well, mostly the podcast mainly. You got what's his name, the Lloyd Evans and JT and Lady C. I listen to them a lot.
Oh yeah, I like them, critical thinkers.
Yep, and then you got Alt Worldly.
Yep, Jake.
And then with yours was actually like over the years I would sporadically listen to one of Lloyd's or JT and Lady C. It was actually yours that really got me getting more and more into it to find out other people's experiences, because that's what I was really interested in, other people's experiences, to see. I mean, there's none better or worse, just different things that people grew up with, and growing up in different areas. And it was funny with your podcast. I was telling my girlfriend at the time about your podcast, and it was this was the JW Life one. And I was like, you know what? I might need to start me a podcast. I'm just thinking crazy. I might need to do that, interview some people, this, that, and the other, about being shunned. And I said, you know what? I got a title for it. She's like, what? I said, I'm gonna call it I'm Shunned. and then about a few seconds after I said that, I said, wait a minute. That's too good of an idea. I said, I'm willing to bet somebody already has this one. So I Googled it. I'm Shunned podcast, and yours came up, which is just Shunned, of course. Yours came up, and I was like, that's, I started listening to that. I was like, I just laughed at it. I said, here we go.
Oh, and now here you are telling your own story. That's pretty cool. The story comes full circle in a way.
Mm-hmm. So like that was just such a coincidence there. But between you and the other ones I listened to, and plus that video that woke me up on YouTube, I got it saved. And so I've actually given it to a few people who have asked. And these are people that I didn't grow up with. It was just somebody I would get into a conversation with. But yeah.
Hey, why don't you send it to me?
Yeah.
Since you've got it, and I'll put it in the show notes. And then maybe there's somebody else out there who's curious about the specific history, and it seems like this made an impact on you. And maybe those people may not make new content anymore or whatever, but maybe it would help somebody else out there. I'd be happy to post it up.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, it's a little over. I mean, it's a long video, but it's so interesting. You don't even know it's that long. So,
well, hey, this is long. This is gonna be a long video too. So, long form content can be good too.
Yeah, long as it's interesting and whatnot. So, yeah, I really hope that I've helped some people realize some stuff and everything. That was my whole point of doing this. So, plus it's therapeutic too, because
for sure.
I've never been able to talk so in depth about myself, because I usually don't talk about myself at all. So let me ask. So today, your mom does shun you, and everyone else? Are you completely shunned by the people from your past? For the most part, we don't have to out anybody, but just wondering. I'm completely shunned by everybody, but it's kind of funny because, the asterisk is my mother, because my girlfriend at the time helped my mother at least come to the fact that it makes no sense for you to give birth to somebody, and then the rules of somebody else who don't even know you is telling you not to speak to them. So me and my mom will have, she won't call me just to have casual conversations. She'll call me because of something that has to do with a bill or something with my kids. But within that conversation, it'll turn into a casual conversation,
Okay.
For a few minutes. So that's about as far as it goes, of course. So I'll take what I can get,
Yeah.
I'm glad to take that. But as far as anybody else from when I grew up, no, nobody has anything to do with me. So I had to make, eventually had to make some new friends, which I don't have a lot of friends, but I'm still learning how to put myself out there to make new friends. I did recently make some, and just plan on expanding my circle a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, that shunning thing is real. But on the other hand, I get word from the people who know the people that are shunning me, that say that they miss me so much, and they would love to talk to me, and this, that, and the other.
Oh, they can. Oh, yeah, exactly. So I'm guessing you would accept their call if they wanted to talk.
Oh, of course. I would send the message back. Like, my number has been the same since 2010. They still got it. Just call me.
Yeah. You're not doing anything that's preventing them from calling. That's between them and their narrow, intolerant religious beliefs.
Right. Now, there was a brother, it might have been late last year, early this year, who did call me, and it was like he has a distinct voice. So when I picked up the phone and said hello, and it was him, I knew immediately who it was, because I grew up with him. He's about 6 or 7 years older than me, but yeah, I'm like, oh man. So now, ironically, not surprisingly, rather, the reason he was calling me was because he's an elder now, and he wants to try to get me to come to memorial on Zoom and all that good stuff. So, but
it has to be an agenda, right?
Right. But like I said, it was just good. Like, we kind of shot the breeze for about 10 minutes. I'm like, it was just good hearing him. But
yeah,
finding out, what's been going on with his family. He got kids, and he's a grandfather now, and all that good stuff. So, but I mean, after that conversation, that was it. I mean, he would send me occasional texts talking about, I got this talk that I'm doing on Zoom about such and such, such and such. But I mean, I knew he had an agenda, but
But isn't that sad? Because you all can obviously talk about things and enjoy a conversation shooting the breeze. But for him, there's this thing that it all has to be about in the end. Mm-hmm. And it's a shame. He's obviously got some conditions on his friendship, and that's a shame, because it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it's like, I have conditions, but yet I have unconditional love for you. Yeah. It's always been like that. They have conditions with the unconditional love.
Yeah. Oh, well, I love you as long as you do think exactly what I do and think, and you see things the same way I do, right? That's how they are. And again, it's a shame, because there are, genuine aspects to these people that we could have relationships with, but they're not able to move beyond this one wall that they have set up for themselves.
Right.
And that's on them. That's their loss ultimately, but it is sad. So,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, so what about your life now? I mean, like you talked about, you're making some new friends. And that's a cool thing. That's a journey for everybody. And I could do entire podcasts for hours, probably, just about friends. It's something I work with people on in my coaching practice and such, but there's a lot there. We were not taught how to make friends in a normal way at all.
Right.
They were automatic friendships based on a shared everything that we were all dropped into the middle of. But what do you want to make out of your life today? What do you enjoy about it today? And is there, because I know you got this hustle shirt on. I know you're a person with goals and dreams, so what do you like about your life today? And is there anything that you're hoping to add to it or get involved in at some point?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm still, working on myself and everything. What I do like about my life now is that I'm free to do whatever I want, and I do have a I've got a decent job right now. I wear shirts that have like hustle or 10X or something like that on it because it serves as a reminder to me. You got to do more to try to get what you want out of life. So I'm not the kind of guy how they say live within your means. I'm like, no, you have your standard of living and get your means up. So that's what I'm working on. And there's some business ventures and stuff that I want to get into. I gotta, get some things straightened out financially, of course, but
Sure.
That's kind of what I like about my life is that I'm motivated and I keep myself busy because it was at one point where I was at a very, very low point living here by myself and nothing going on, not really anybody to talk to. And you know how that can go. So it get to thinking crazy stuff, but like really, even when I was in those dark points, the only thing that kept me from doing anything drastic was the fact that I got my 2 children. I got one that's about to graduate high school next month. I got another one that graduates in 3 years, and I can't be that selfish as to put that kind of stress on them. You know what I'm saying? So that's really what keeps me going is them. So plus I'm looking forward. My daughter is a dancer. She's going to school for marketing. And my son, I don't know what he's going to do, but he's an interesting character. He loves to cook and things like that. So I just want to see what that next chapter with them is going to bring. And at the same time, pretty much all 3 of us are just going to grow up together. Who knows what kind of empire we might have. But yeah, and plus, I don't want them to go through the same things I went through at their age negatively. So I use my experiences and I tell them about stuff all the time so they can have as much of an advantage as they can to get through the stuff going on in this crazy world. So that's what keeps me going. And what I hope for is just to keep expanding on things, keep learning, always try to learn something. Don't get not to stay stagnant or take things for granted. That's me. And whatever comes my way, it comes my way.
Oh, awesome. I think that those are really cool things. I hope that as you continue your process of learning and your journey of growth, I hope that at some point you stick around for yourself because you're pretty cool too and you've got something to offer. And there are people who care about you as well. Because, I mean,
I'm learning that.
Was that?
I'm learning that it's a struggle. Like I said, I'm so selfless that it's hard for me to do things for myself, but I'm learning to. And at one point, I didn't know or didn't realize how much people mean to me. I mean, even in my own family until really recently. I had my aunt, the one I said that lost, when I lost my cousin. She ended up moving to back from Indiana to Mississippi last year, and so all the times I would go back to Mississippi, I would always have to get a hotel room. My mom wouldn't let me stay in her house, even though she got an extra bedroom, things like that. So I never felt the love. Every time I would go to Mississippi, I'll do what I have to do, get my kids, come back in a day. But when she let me stay at her house that she had remodeled, that, it felt like home, So, and she kind of gets on my mom's case a little bit too about you got all these kids who are so disrespectful to their parents and their parents stick around, and I haven't done anything except leave a religion. That's all. I haven't done anything. I don't have a police record or nothing. So
no, that and again, so people mean a lot to you, but you also mean a lot to other people, and we just don't allow ourselves to see that because we were taught not to by a cult that wanted us to feel like we were nothing, so that we had to look to them in order to be something. And we all, as presently constituted, are enough and are worthy of love and respect and affection and all of those things. So I'm glad that you're here putting your story out, because there are people who are going to listen to this. They're complete strangers to you, and Keion's about to matter to some people that he may never meet in his entire life. And that's a pretty cool thing too.
Yeah, I like that. Like, so that's my main reason for doing this. I want to get out there. It helps me to tell, but also it'll help somebody to hear it. So yeah, and I want to say thank you, because all of the podcasts that you've done, all the episodes, and there's a little piece of me in every single one of those stories, and I'm always interested. I listen to all of them, or have listened to all of them. So I love it.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate the kind words, Keion. I appreciate you telling your story, and I hope that you keep growing and taking care of yourself and have a wonderful life.
All right. Thank you.